probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here. It's another edition of Summer School. That's our college ball preview series on the Cover 3 podcast. Today, I'm going Wake Forest. I'm going to Deacon Digest. Nailed it on the first try. Yes.
Yeah.
I got Ken Lemons, Debro. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. How are you, bud?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Just I think is Wake first day at AC Media Day this year, or what day are they?
We are in the third day. We're Wednesday, I think. Yeah. So.
All right, you got to show up to the first day, so we can hang because I think
I'm moving to Charlotte, so that's perfect.
Okay, cool. We for those who don't know, Cam is a great hang, and we all like all the ACC guys. They run pretty tight. So, but then we got to go to Big Ten after that. So should be a good time, man. Wake Forest last year, unfortunately they did take a step back. Quality of play, step back, close game luck, major step back, which is kind of beyond your control at times. Are they going to coach anything differently this year? It's not really implying they have to, but like, are they going to run anything different?
I think offensively you'll see a little bit of difference. I think you'll see a little bit more reliance on the run game than we have in the past. Not just because of the deficiencies they had at quarterback, but you have a guy like Damon Claiborne where it's like, look, like he is going to be one of your guys. Like you retained him, paid him all this money. One of the best talents to come into Winston-Salem in however long. And then you look at your offensive line, and, last year they were, not great at all when it came to the pass protection, but when it came to running the ball, they were solid. If you take out the sacks for Wake's run game, they were a really solid running game. So I think you look at them and say, hey, how do we ease a guy like Hank Bachmeier? And I think you start relying and saying, hey, how do we get Damon Claiborne 25, 28 touches, whether that's, on the ground or just kind of swinging out of the backfield.
Where is this team, having watched them in spring, where are they clearly better than they were last year?
Oof. I think it's linebacker, which feels really weird because they were a really solid linebacker core last year. But when you went through spring practice, they had Dylan Hazen was out with a little bit of an injury. Quincy Bryant was out with a little bit of an injury. Draco Robinson was out as well. And so, you really had to figure out what they had at linebacker, and then they bring in Southern Illinois transfer Branson Combs, who Dave Clawson had to call his head coach, and he was like, I've never had a linebacker or a transfer come in this ready to perform. Like he was like, this guy is going to start. He's going to be great. Aiden Hall, he had a little flub at the end of last year, rising sophomore, really, really came on strong. And then, they're like, okay, cool. We have now 5 linebackers with another 3 coming in. They like Darius Jones from St. Francis Academy. He's playing pretty solid in the spring. So they really feel comfortable about what they have at linebacker this year.
All right, let's go to ACC Media Day. Who's a guy who probably won't get voted preseason first or second team all ACC, but will have a pretty good chance to make that team come the postseason?
I'd probably go with Evan Slocum at safety. So they had him kind of running as a nickel last year. He's a really, really athletic guy from Cartersville. Shout out Trevor Lawrence. And they had him kind of at a nickel, and he was fine there, but you could tell it wasn't his position. And now with Malik Mustafa heading to the pros, Jalen Garnett heading to the pros, they've moved him back to being a true safety, and you just kind of see like this is where he's supposed to have been the entire time. I think Wake Forest had a pretty solid track record when it's come to safeties. I think with him and Nick Anderson, they should be a good duo, but I'm really, really high on what Evan Slocum is going to be able to bring to the table this year.
So they took Bachmeier out of the portal, and when I first saw that, I was like, I don't like that. But CBS has CUSA rights, and so they're on our air quite a bit on CBS Sports Network during the midweek, and so we watch a lot of CUSA games. And La Tech did not look particularly well coached last year to me. And Dave Clawson, I'm confident, is one of the best coaches in college football. I took some heat for not dropping him in our coach rankings. I'm like, look, the sport has changed around them a little bit. Dave Clawson still knows what the hell he's doing. Should Bachmeier get the benefit of the doubt with the coaching upgrade?
I think so. And I think it's a point that I think both of us made just independently when it came to the transfer guys was when you looked at those group of 5 quarterbacks, whether it was him, Taylon Green, DeQuan Finn, Curtis Rourke, essentially like the big boys just didn't touch them at all. So it was essentially a spin the wheel, who do you like better? And I know for Wake, it came down to him and Curtis Rourke. And so they ended up, it was just whoever came first, and it was Hank. So I went back and watched as many Boise State games and Louisiana Tech games as I possibly could. My brain is now destroyed. I think he's fine and I think for that, it's more so, what are your expectations of him? But I don't think the expectation of Hank Bachmeier is to go out there and be this sort of Caleb Williams guy. I don't think the expectation is to be this Jaden Daniels guy. That's not what Wake Forest quarterbacks have been the last 4 or 5 years, whether it's John Walford, Jamie Newman, or Sam Hartman. Have they been pretty good college quarterbacks? Yes. They've just been competent. And that's something that Wake Forest just missed last year, was just needing a quarterback to be competent. Like, I don't think people really realize how much it takes for, if you have a competent quarterback. And I think it showed up a lot more for them in the red zone, or you get into the red zone. They had 20 fewer attempts in the red zone than they did in 2022 and 2021. Further that with their touchdowns, they had scored, I think it was 46% of their times in the red zone. They scored touchdowns. They scored 67% of those times in 2022 and 2021. It's just purely, can you not just mess up, man? And I think with Hank, I think he's had some sort of unlucky stuff in terms of, like, he gets punished a lot for his turnover-worthy plays, but it's not an abundance of them. And I think that's kind of, the benefit of the doubt. And then you look at him during spring practice and it was like, okay, I can see this dude running an offense. You look at him, you see him throwing the ball. It's like, yeah, I can see why he was a 4-star. And so I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to sit here and win the Heisman, but could he be a competent quarterback? I don't think that's a wrong statement at all.
Which are the fall position battles that will most kind of determine this team's fate?
I think wide receiver is definitely going to be something that is going to be, really heavy, to look at. Because I think, you got Jonathan Green missed the spring. We've been told he's going to be back for the summer and for the fall. But you have him, Walker Merrill, who didn't really play a ton at Tennessee, got injured halfway through the year at Wake. So you're going to need to see him come along. You also have Horatio Fields, who got injured last year, who was supposed to have a breakout season, looked really, really good all spring. I think you need these guys to develop and really help out Hank. Because if Hank's throwing it, someone's got to catch it. And then you also have guys like Micah Mays, who I know was a top 247 prospect that people really, really loved. He was injured during the spring, but they love him. They think he'll be a star this year. And then also Jeremiah Melvin. They really, really, really like Jeremiah. So I think the outside receivers with those 4 or 5 guys are really going to set the tone of what this team can be. If they can sit here and be what we've seen out of 2022, 2021 Wake Forest, then I think we'll be, Wake Forest should start winning more games than they did last year. If we saw the inconsistent up and down play we saw from the receivers last year, things are going to be really tough.
They could definitely have one of the better skill position cores on offense in the ACC. Right. The other question would be, can they block it up? They do return 3 or 4 starters from right. last year's offensive line. Is there reason for hope here?
I think so. When they got Keegan Trost out of the portal to beat a couple other P4 teams, some top group 5 teams for him as well. I think right now the not the problem, but the question they have is what's the best alignment for them. They've tried to put Devontae Gordon at left tackle, and there's been some up and downs there. Is he just better suited for right tackle? Does that mean Trost is better for left tackle? And I think just trying to figure that out is going to be paramount for them. I think they really like what they have with George Sell and Matt Golden and Luke Pettibone. And Nick Sharp, because I think losing Nick Sharp last year was a really, really, really big loss for them. He went down to the Vanderbilt game. And that's someone that, if you talk to the coaches, they're like, this dude is an NFL player. And I think that's something Wake Forest has missed over the last couple of years on the offensive line, is a surefire NFL player. And so I think getting him back will be pretty good. Sell is pretty good. I like Golden and Pettibone. But I think it's the question of, do you have the right left tackle? And if not, what can you do to kind of mitigate that? And you saw that last year where instead of, they running a lot of just kind of like dive, they just ran stretch a ton. They're like, screw this. We're going to use our athleticism. We're just going to go side to side and just figure this out.
Makes sense. Yeah. I Wake and South Carolina were 2 of the teams off the top of my head. It was like, you have a pretty good left tackle prospect. The guy goes down with injury. Almost no team in the country has good backup tackles. Some teams have playable and some teams have, unplayable.
There's a reason every time a halfway decent tackle goes into the portal and everyone's like, oh, and Alabama has reached out.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. An area of continuity that actually I thought was was underrated last year for them in some ways is that front seven and that defensive line. I mean, they didn't get a lot of pass rush opportunities because Wake was losing a lot, but some of those dudes got some juice.
I will probably go on the record right now and say I think it has a chance to be the best pass rushing group in the ACC. I think you have getting Jasheen Davis back is monstrous. That's the good thing about NIL. I know people have their problem with it. That dude could have been a 4th or 5th round pick, decided to come back and play his way to being a 3rd, maybe a 2nd round pick. Kendron Wayman on the other side of him, very, very good. And then at defensive tackle, Bryce Gagne's coming up from Villanova was really, really good and unexpected. Kevin Pointer, if you go back and watch any game with him, he just jumps off the snap every single time. Justin Cody, I changed his last name. Justin Cody was someone that we thought for 3 years wasn't really good, didn't really have it, turned into a really, really good guy. And then now they added a guy like Patine Adiroga from Georgetown. Like Dave Cohen did defensive line coach. He has just continued to just churn things out. I think having 5 guys back from last year, 6 if you count BJ Wood, having that much continuity is going to be great alongside a linebacking core that they feel great about.
Is there a guy on this team that if he arrives and meets his potential maybe a year ahead of schedule, you can really kind of turn the fortunes for this season?
I'm going to go with 2 different names in there because it's always that weird spot. One, Devon Patterson. They're really, really high on the safety. I know they have Nick Anderson and Evan Slocum. But if Devon Patterson can turn into this sort of just outlandish safety, it opens up so many more things. They can move Evan Slocum back down to a nickel. They can move people left and right. They can play. They like playing with a lot of 3 linebackers, but they can put Nick Anderson in as a linebacker. So it helps if you have another safety like that. And then Tayshaun Burney, tiny guy, Carroll Day. That's a true freshman this year, early enrolled. I think Andrew Ivins called him arguably the best cover corner in the state of Florida. But obviously he's all 5'8", 5'9".
Sure.
But I think people are starting to realize now that your nickel position is one of the most, if not the most important part of your defense, just because of how wonky people can get with the offense. If he can take that step this year and become a starting nickel corner, you start feeling a whole lot better about everything else with your defense.
So the schedule is interesting. They Ole Miss, we already knew was on the schedule for homecoming early. You get a bye after that one. They miss Florida State. They miss the Hokies. They miss Louisville, and they miss SMU, which is probably 4 of the 7 best in the conference, at least 4 of the top 10, I would say. But they do have to play Miami and Clemson and NC State, so it's not like they dodge everybody. Is there a game on this schedule to you that is really pivotal to make a bowl game?
I think the Virginia game in week 2 is just going to be the kind of setting the tone from this year. I think we saw it last year in terms of the Georgia Tech game where Wake Forest is 3-0 going in there. And it's like you win this and you feel great going into Clemson. You lose this and now the season kind of spirals. I think that's that UVA game. I think UVA is going to be a good, not great team. They're fine, but they have just as many holes as you do. If you can win this home game, you're probably not going to beat Ole Miss. I'm not going to sit here and think you're going to beat them. But if you can go into that Ole Miss game, 2-0 and you lose them, then you have more confidence, though, against Louisiana. You can beat them in 3-1. Now your entire schedule is open because you have teams like UConn, who is just not going to be a good team. Stanford, I love their coaching staff. I think they're going to be good in a couple of years. I don't think they'll be good this year. You have Cal, who I think is going to be a solid team. I love Jaden Ott, but that's still more than a coin flip game. They play UNC close all the time. What is Manny Diaz going to do at Duke? Who knows there? But I think if you can win that type of game, and I think that's something that's reminiscent of 2021. I remember ACC kickoff that year, right before Dave Clawson got on stage, he told me, "Hey, we've got a couple games this year that we feel really good in, but we've got 6 or 7 that are just coin flips. If we can win 4 or 5, great." And so I think that's kind of the sentiment for this year. So I don't think they're going to sit here and they're obviously going to try to win every game, but I don't think the expectation is to win, 11, 12 games. But if you can win that coin flip game of a UVA, especially after you came off a year where you lost basically every coin flip game, it makes you feel a whole lot better. And confidence is just so undervalued, I think, in sports.
Cam, really enjoyed it as always, man. We're going to be following all your coverage on Demon Deacon Digest. You guys can click on, it's kind of right over Cam's left shoulder there on the QR code. If you're on audio, obviously just type in the URL like old school style. And I'll see you in Charlotte, buddy.
See you, man.